Clubhouse.
This is Paul.
This is Caroline.
And welcome back to our press pass coverage for the 2023 edition of the ATX Television Festival. This year's festival took place in downtown Austin, Texas between June 1st and June 4th. This is an event we look forward to every year, and this year the event was gracious enough to grant both Caroline and I press passes so that we could attend and soak in the event. What did you think of this year's event just overall, Caroline?
Overall, I thought it was wonderful. It was so great to be back in person. I love all these live events. This festival is so different than all the cons that we typically cover. There's no exhibition hall. There's not like that autograph table. There's no 8x10 signings, but it's like completely more chill, I guess I want to say. Like everybody is a lot more about the fans interacting with each other. And then it's really cool because the talent, the people like Timothy Oliphant and Ted Danson and all these other awesome stars were just mixing and mingling with us. Like we could see them all over the place. So it was very different, very unique, and I highly recommend this festival.
What's different about it, as say compared to like a fan con, is that when you go to see whoever you're going to see, whether it's at a panel or at their table or a photograph op at a con, it's very catered and curated such that is your only interaction. That is it. You're not going to just see them stray from the area where the celebrities are kept away from everybody else.
Well, and in fact, because they charge for pictures and stuff like that, they're actually behind curtains and behind like all these like set up dividers and stuff like that. So even when they're like, you know, having some lunch or doing something like that, like they're not anywhere near where all the fans are. And that is just the polar opposite of ATX.
Case in point, Caroline and I pull up to our hotel and we see a tall, white-haired, bespectacled man standing in the valet area.
Immediately, I was like, it's Ted Danson. Like, that's amazing. So we like pulled right up to Ted. It was like he was the valet. It was adorable. His wife, Mary, was also there, and she was fantastic. We got to see them at a panel later that we'll talk to you guys about. But the two of them, just seeing them on the sidewalk, like as soon as we got there, I was like, ATX. This is why I love you guys so much, because you always have these surprise moments where there's just the biggest star standing right in front of you and you don't have to do anything, but you could say something. We opted to just continue on with our valet.
Be cool. Act like you've been there before.
That's actually the number one rule of ATX. In fact, it is be cool. And that is all that you need to do is don't be like in their faces. Don't be like that, but you can take selfies. And we certainly took a picture or two, Mr. Danson and his wife, Mary. So it was fantastic. But I feel like we need to talk a little bit about where we stayed, because this was the venue for the majority of the panels and the different events throughout the festival.
Now, in years past, the fest centered around the historic Stephen F. Austin Hotel. Beginning last year and continuing into this year, they have relocated almost everything across the street to the also historic, but more recently updated and much larger Driskill Hotel.
Yeah, I highly recommend staying at the Driskill, you guys. It was so easy for us because we were staying in the hotel. We could just literally wander downstairs to one of the ballrooms and be able to sit down and watch one of the panels. It was so easy. And for any of you guys who are aware of the Texas heat, this year was not nearly as bad as it has been in the past. But there were some years where people were literally fainting in line outside because we were so hot, and there was just nothing you could do. That's where you had to line up, and all of the venues made you stay outside until it was time for the panel. But this was fantastic. The Driskill had a bar, they had a restaurant. In fact, when you check in, the first thing they do is offer you a beer. How unique is that? Welcome to Texas, right?
Exactly.
It was amazing. When they first asked us, we were like, what? But it was so fun and cool. They offer all these other amenities with the Driskill. Like you could get an actual guided tour of the Driskill and find out all the historical points of it. And there's plenty.
I saw people taking that tour.
Yeah, you can even see, and there's like a guided tour, like an actual person in the hotel that shows you around. There's also like all this art on the wall everywhere, and you can take a self-guided tour through that, and you can see all this fantastic art. It was pretty amazing. I mean, every wall is covered with very unique and different things. We were standing in front of various paintings and commenting on them and noticing them. So, you know, kudos to the Driskill. Even I noticed a little card in our room. They do offer room service, of course. But when I flipped on the back, it was like, there's all these other amenities. Like we had all these discounts at like being able to go to a paddleboard place or being able to go to a different restaurant, or all this stuff was included with just staying at the Driskill, which is super cool. And it would encourage people, I think, to go like explore the city a little bit.
True to being a historical location that has recently been restored, our room was gigantic and our bathroom was not as gigantic, but the ceilings were as tall as I've ever stayed in. For sure. They were,
it was pretty amazing, you guys. The actual room was beautiful. And then again, the hotel itself, it was so well appointed for all of the things we wanted to do in it. I mean, you could literally find anything we needed for the festival right there, and everyone was well prepared. Like if you needed anything, they had little breakout sections that we could go in and like buy merch. They had little areas where you could, for press, if you guys are ever looking for that, if you're a fellow podcaster or something, you're writing articles, they had a great press room with plenty of space to sit and write. Now, this is not the case everywhere. I had an experience last summer when we did the Bentonville Film Festival, which was wonderful and a beautiful town. However, press room wasn't there. We didn't have the opportunity to do that. We were sitting on the floor trying to write notes and stuff like that. So this was so nice because they had snacks and drinks, and they even had like some of the talent come in. So if you wanted to do your interviews in there, you could do that. Really great. This such a great change for ATX to be able to be, I would say 90% indoors in the summer here is lovely. And it also meant that I didn't have to be concerned about like walking shoes or stuff. Like I could wear whatever I wanted to wear. I didn't have to be concerned about, oh, you know, do I have like a towel for my neck? Like a lot of people worry about stuff like that. Nope, no sunscreen, no bug spray, no nothing at all. Just, you're going to be indoors. You're going to have a great time.
There were a couple of outdoor waits, but they were relatively short. And they've enacted a new Fast Pass scenario in addition to booking events at ACL Live or Austin City Limits. Now that has been a huge change because years past, we've had our biggest events in the Paramount Theater. That meant we queued up outside in the sun and just waited for an hour or two before our big marquee events. Now, and hopefully they continue this, with booking at ACL, you walk to ACL, it's a couple blocks over, and you walk right in.
Right. And they had like, you know, plenty of drinks, snacks, things like that. And plenty of seating. Like it wasn't nearly as crazy. We'll talk about the different events that we saw in there. But I mean, it was great that there was plenty of seating for us and super comfortable, very cold. There was many events that I was at this year that I was like, wow, I am freezing in here. And that is nothing I've ever said about ATX.
So overall, the 12th season of ATX shows that they have matured quite a bit from the purely, you know, this is my first year volunteering sort of thing that we had experienced very early on. Now the volunteers have all been there a while. They have answers to questions, which is not always the case with large cons or this con, but this year I don't think I ran into a single volunteer or staff member that didn't know exactly everything they needed to know about doing their job.
Plus, they had a great app that you could use that was completely being updated, seemingly by the second. Every time I'd click on the app, it was updating the schedule. So you could check in there. There was a lot of opportunity to see what you wanted to go to next without it being like confusing or anything. They also had like a print one. If it was something like, I really like to have print ones, like I was harassing Paul that I wanted like a spreadsheet or something, because I like that print where you can like circle, you know, what panels you're going go into and kind of see what they conflict with. I find it easier that way, but I thought the app was actually very easy to use, and I'm not somebody who totally uses tech. However, I do want to point out too that with our badge, we also got the virtual pass, and that's something that if you guys are thinking like, hey, I'm nowhere near Texas, I'm not going to be able to go to ATX, I'm not listening to the rest of this podcast. No, you guys, there's a virtual pass that you can watch all these panels, not exactly in real time, a little bit of a delay, but not that much. And you can get to see all the things we did. This worked out perfectly for me. And I would say, I don't want to say that the population of the fangoers is aging, but I kind of think it was. Like, I kind of saw a lot of people that we have seen for many years. And hey, it turns out we all got older.
That's true. I didn't notice Gen Z so much.
I didn't see a lot of like 19, 20-year-olds. Like, I mean, this was like definitely a lot of older people. Now, we're going to talk to you guys about the different panels and certainly like the Cheers reunion. I mean, that's going to draw a certain crowd, right?
Right.
But to that point, like it was great for me to be able to go down and do panels and watch stuff and be there. And then when I wanted to take a break, like I was done peopling because like after the pandemic, I definitely have my limits of like how long I want to be in any type of crowd. I could go back to our room and I could turn on the panel in, you know, on my phone, on the iPad, even on the TV, and I could watch it and not like get behind or miss anything from the comfort of my hotel bed, which is fantastic. It's like the perfect blend for me of like, I want to take a break and put my feet up, have some lunch and like eat in my room and like enjoy just some quiet and collect my thoughts about this last panel. And then also be able to go downstairs and be like at a party. That's a pretty great way to handle the 4 days.
I want to stress that these comments are probably outside of the organizer's control, in that depending on when you are listening to this podcast, we are currently in the middle of the 2023 Writers Guild of America strike. They probably wouldn't say this publicly, but I would say it heavily impacted the programming and even the overall demeanor and attitude of the con, because there was sort of a cloud over it, in that people they didn't have the same grounding and the same foundation beneath them in order to say where their next job was.
Absolutely. I mean, and that's been something that we've experienced as podcasters for really the last like couple of months, really. Anyone that we've talked to, I went to WonderCon, every single person that I talked to there in the interviews in the industry, whether it be makeup artist or wardrobe or anything else, they all had no idea where their next job was coming from, because with WGA being on strike, it was just like people just had no idea what's going to come next in the industry. So I would not say that there was a cloud, but I would say that there was like uncertainty. So because of that, first of all, the schedule changed
a lot
frequently.
Yeah.
And some were, new people coming, which was great. And some people were obviously not coming anymore. That created, a little bit of like a dynamic where you did need to check the app constantly. And that is something that they continue to remind you of, especially by like day 2 or 3. They were at the start of every panel. It was like, everybody get out your app, please. And like, make sure you're checking for schedule changes. At least it was happening in real time with those schedule changes, that it's not like we went anywhere and was like, I thought this person was supposed to be here and then they weren't. We were aware. And so that was cool. That's as much as an organizer can do, is to let not have you show up at something you don't want to see.
And it ranged from people pulling out of individual panels to entire panels just erasing, just being gone.
And that happens at every live event that we've ever encountered. There's always some amount of shifting around. I think that the writer's strike in general also made the conversation change quite a bit. Like, we weren't talking about entertainment in a fun, exciting way all the time. There was a lot more talk about how the industry works and what the kind of behind the scenes, like when the cogs are actually moving, how that works and what people are being paid and how they're being credited and how they're being treated and all of those things. I think that portion, because the answer is they're being treated, paid, and everything else badly, that put a little bit of a cloud, because the people in the industry were there feeling sad about that. And then as the fans were absorbing more and more stories and more information about the treatment and about what was going on behind the scenes, I think that there was more of like just true compassion, like some real, like, my Lord, this needs to get fixed. You know, this isn't the way we want our entertainment to be delivered to us. We want everyone to be treated well and paid properly and appropriately and all that kind of stuff. So it had a bunch of different conversations this year than we've had any other year there. Most years, and I expect going forward, it is fully a celebration of TV, all things TV. Because we're at like a kind of a grindy point in entertainment, that a little bit took over.
And I think we will probably, in a couple of the smaller panel discussions, it'll come up again.
Oh, for sure.
But in the meantime, why don't we get started talking about with what we did Thursday when we arrived. We realized that we needed to get right into line.
Okay, so this is super funny. Somehow, and I don't know what the hell, I read that the panel that we were going to go to, we were driving in on Thursday. So we could have come in on Wednesday night, but we came in on Thursday. And when we did, we thought we had plenty of time. Like, we thought that it was like starting at 7. This is the Justified panel that we were going to. As it turns out, thank goodness for the paper schedule, because the second that I walked in and I picked it up and I was just kind of thumbing through it, I was like, Paul, it's starting in like half an hour, not like an hour and a half like we thought. We did not stop. We just took our stuff and like ran over to that panel. And I'm super glad we did. We had fast passes for that, which that's another new perk that they have, is these fast passes. So you can get some of those and make sure you see the things you want to see. The funny thing was, though, when we were just figuring out where we needed to go, we pushed the wrong elevator floor, right? So we pushed the wrong button in the elevator, and we go and the doors open and Timothy Oliphant, aka Raylan Givens, is standing right in front of me from Justified, and I was like, what? And he was like, huh, like he didn't get in the elevator. He like kind of turned back around and was like, huh, I'm not really sure, and kind of was like walking around, and like every part of me was
he needed to go to the same place we were going.
Yes, we were all going to the same panel. So it was like super funny that it was like, oh, we're all in the wrong place. It was funny. We basically ended up all kind of walking towards the right place. Super fun. And again, just another one of those like fan meets celebrity moments that just happen all the time at ATX.
So for those of you that are not familiar, Justified went off the air about 8 years ago, and they are staging a comeback. They're not committing to like a whole new run of the show, but they are producing an 8-episode revival. And they brought the first episode of those 8 to Austin for us to watch, which is really cool because A, we were fans of the show, and B, the rest of the world doesn't get to see it until July 18th. It's pretty far out for us to have seen the first one, and pinky promise with the producers that we're not going to spill the beans on what to expect in the episode.
Right. I think that the biggest surprise to me in watching was that they cast his real life daughter, Vivian, in the role of his daughter on the show. And when we got to see her in action, it was wild to see her on screen, and then like way more wild to see her actually interacting with her dad on the stage, because the two of them, they had a lot to say about working with each other, and they were cute and funny and definitely teasy with one another. Very dad and daughter.
She's not that impressed that her dad is Timothy Oliphant.
Not at all. Not even a little bit. And in fact, she very much didn't understand what he did for a living for like a long time. So it was funny and cute. And I enjoy those types of moments, because even though it was not really at the end of the day a panel that really got super in depth about the show, not really, but it gave you a flavor for the cast, and it gave you this idea of like what the dynamic was on the set. And you got like a lot more like personal stuff that you wouldn't get if you just read like even an in-depth summary of the show. You wouldn't get what we saw, which was like all of the rapport that they have with one another, and just sort of the vibe, I guess, of the show, which seemed to be fun and definitely nostalgic for Timothy, as they called him Tim, which just feels weird to me to call him Tim. And
it's very familiar feeling,
right? Doesn't it? Overall, like it felt like we got some behind the scenes scenes kind of glimpses, not on purpose. It's not like the moderator was like, no, we're going to tell you behind the scenes. It's just the nature of when you bring these people together, especially if you're going to bring family members or whatever, and the atmosphere of ATX, which is like, we want the tea. Like, we're not interested in you telling us how many episodes or every single detail like that. Like, we want to know, like, were you guys pulling pranks on each other? Like, what was it like working with your dad? Like, those types of things that fans don't typically get answers to.
And apparently, Tim takes a long time in the hair and makeup chair.
Which was super funny, and he was very embarrassed that she shared that.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I believe he said that was bullshit and wanted to move on.
I think so too. But yeah, lots of fun stuff between the two of them, though. Like, she was like, I wasn't that interested in like what he did for a living. And then like every single time that they would ask any type of other question, he'd be like, I'm not that interested in what she's doing. It was funny. Again, just to sort of like get their personalities more. A lot of times when you go and you watch these things, especially at cons, they have these pre-packaged spiels that they're supposed to say from the network or from whomever. They have these lines that they say, even paragraphs of them sometimes, but they never really let down, their hair. They don't really tell you what's going on. But what was going on between Tim and Vivian, I definitely felt like there's a fair shot they're gonna like argue after they get off the stage, where she's gonna be like, no more press coverage for you, right? Something, because it was funny. Definitely, to see how they respond to one another. And it actually gave me a lot of insight for when we were watching the episode, because we do get to watch the episode together. It helped me actually understand their on-screen dynamic, which I think is pretty important for understanding the show overall.
Right, because they do play father and daughter on the show. Other cast members on stage included Boyd Holbrook, who is playing this season's villain, Adelaide Clemens, which is the villain's main squeeze, and then a producer named Sarah Timberman. Unfortunately, due to comedian Theo Vaughn needing that exact same stage right after us, the panel had to be somewhat truncated. Yeah. And they focused on the father-daughter stuff.
They really did. And sometimes that happens where a conversation starts to like take on a life of its own. Like I said, the moderators don't necessarily guide every portion of the conversation, especially between these two. Like, really, Tim and Vivian were like talking to each other, or commenting on each other's answers before even the moderator could ask another question. So in a lot of ways, they were guiding the conversation, and that's okay in this type of situation where we want to get all that, behind the scenes stuff.
Some more fast facts that they did get to talk about were that this is not a Raylan Givens book. This is a book called City Primeval, High Noon in Detroit. So that explains, and this is all on IMDb, why Raylan is marshalling in Detroit now. How we're picking up on his career at this new location, away from Kentucky, away from Florida, away from all these other places that we're more familiar with.
So in the source material, it's not Raylan Givens that's actually a part of this, but what they did was they figured out in reading the book, they were like,
felt like Raylan.
Like it really felt like this could be a Raylan character. So that was actually kind of exciting, because it means that hopefully they can find other source material where they feel like, what, this sounds like Raylan's.
And it sounds like it had been an ongoing conversation between Timothy and the producers, finding a story that felt right to go back and do it, because of course the last question is always going to be, would you go back and do it again? And it sounded like yes, as long as the story's there, he is happy to play Raylan for as long as they will let him.
Which I have to say, we normally talk a little bit about how these stars look in person. Raylan, aka Timothy, very adorable, very cute.
I am completely heterosexual, but he's easily the most handsome man I've seen, like, close up.
Wow, that's a big thing for you to say.
Easily.
Really?
Well, just when he turned around and he
was
saw us
just
in the elevator,
looking us right at us.
Right.
It was just the two of us looking right at him.
Yeah. Yeah.
You got a little swoony. You were like, oh,
I won't say swoony. I won't say that, but it was like ding, like a check mark. Most handsome man you've ever seen in real life. Check. It was like
wow,
right there.
That's awesome. Well, I love that you had that experience. I think that he in person is so Raylan that it's wild to me, because I mean he walks like him, he talks like him, he looks like him. Like there's not like, it's not like he's putting on this whole facade to become Raylan, you know.
Yeah.
He is Timothy, you know, and
Right.
like he was talking, walking, doing everything in front of us dressed like Raylan.
Right. If you see him in, let's say, Deadwood or the Santa Clarita Diet, those are more like big characters that he's putting on.
Santa Clarita, yeah.
Whereas Raylan, yeah, it
It
feels
just felt like him.
more like the guy pushing the elevator button that we saw.
I love that you said that he's the most handsome man. That should make some
It
sense.
just is. I mean,
I think
it's a
you know
fact.
what? You guys, I have to tell you, get over on Twitter or on Instagram or on Facebook at Pod Clubhouse. Check out all the photographs that Paul took during the festival, because he had tons of retweets and really, really great pictures. Like you can see what he's talking about with Timothy, because he took a really great
And
one
that's just a phone picture
of him like grinning though, and Paul, you're like, it didn't capture his beauty.
It doesn't. It really doesn't.
That's awesome. I'm glad that you felt that way about him, because, you know, I never know. Sometimes I can get a little sucked into the character, which makes me actually not want to meet the actor behind it. Because, like, so for instance, the Gilmore Girls year, Scott Patterson was there. You know, he plays Luke, and I was very into Luke. However, I was standing right next to him and I did not want to talk to him at all, because if Scott Patterson wasn't going to talk or act or look like Luke, I don't want that to exist. Like that would mess me up, you know, like, no, you just be in Stars Hollow, you know, like I don't want to do this. So it was interesting that when you can take those characters out of their setting like that and put them somewhere else, and like that was Raylan Givens freaking, you know, in Austin that we saw, and that made it amazing.
After that, we went to trivia. We have been going to trivia since maybe our second or third time.
Yeah.
And if you recall, last year, we were able to go see the Westworld premiere in New York thanks to winning Trivia Night. This year, we also placed first. However, the prize this year was nothing as grand as a trip to New York City. We did, however, walk away with a digital movie projector,
which is awesome, and I'm sure will be like of great use this summer. And I think it's amazing that they had such great sponsors like Tubi, who came out and like gave these prizes. I know a lot of people were really hounding for those Tubi like snuggies. They were very adorable, and like I said, if you guys remember, it was freaking cold in a lot of these panels, so my eyes were really laser beaming on those Tubi snuggies.
If any of our table managed to listen to this podcast, I recognize that I was not pulling my weight this year.
You felt that way?
I had a couple of answers and I confirmed a couple more, but
that's
really
the trick of being a team, right? When you're a team, it's okay. And it was great because we actually had a wide array of ages, which is a hot tip I would give you guys. If you come out to ATX or really any trivia night, do not gravitate to people who all look like you. Please don't. Choose people of all different backgrounds and all different ages, because that is going to get you the winning table.
They put the scores up on a projector screen, and there was a table whose team name suggested it was something like Gen Z Express or something like that. And guess what, ladies and gentlemen, they, out of like 19 tables, they were like 20th. They had such a low score.
Yeah, I think we had like 3,000 something. They had like 300 something.
The questions are like, what's the third word in the second verse of the Gilligan's Island theme? So you gotta know. You gotta know stuff. Some of that stuff you gotta know. And you know what? The one that I thought was, oh my God, I didn't think anyone was gonna get, was the Succession Kids lineup. That one was hard.
That one was a doozy, because I know most of you guys are thinking, I know the order of the kids' birth. But do you? Okay, so I'm going to tell you guys right now. The question was from oldest to youngest. Tell the names of the Roy kids.
And we'll give you Connor and Kendall. We'll just give you that.
Okay, so it goes Connor, Kendall, and I know everyone out there is thinking Shiv, Roman. No, No, Roman's not the baby, as it turns out. It's actually
Roman.
Connor, Kendall, Roman, Shiv is the baby. And thankfully, people at our table had already been talking about that and knew about that and was like, yes. And I was like, holy crap, I never would have gotten that right. And it made the difference because we only won by like 1 or 2 questions. So it made all the difference. But hey, we had a girl on our team who was awesome. We totally chatted with her. I hope she actually comes on and is hosts with us sometimes. She actually had the gem from the gem in the holograms like tattoo on her wrist, and then there was a gem in the holograms question in the thing. Like we just really picked our team well. So that was awesome. And like I said, big hint: pick people with a lot of different backgrounds, because we had like a college student with us. We had a woman who was like 60 on our team. We had people from like all over, which was perfect because they knew stuff about Degrassi that I didn't know anything about.
You got to get a couple Canadians on your team.
But we had 2 Canadians on our team. That was a huge help because they knew there was like at least 4 Canadian questions and they knew them. Yeah. But by the flip, they had no idea anything about Cheers. And I was like, I know the answer. It was a really great balance. Highly recommend. Very fun event. If you guys are at ATX, get to trivia night. And guess what? They served us pizza. We had drinks. We had popcorn. We had plenty of stuff the whole time. And it was all just a part of your fee for the festival. So actually, Paul commented on our way back, we paid for like 1 meal a day, if that. And otherwise, we ate all the things that were available just around the festival.
Delightful dill flavored popcorn.
It was all about it, you guys. He spilled it all over the floor in the hotel room and was so sad. There was a moment where I'm pretty sure he was just going to eat it off the floor. And I was just going to turn a blind eye to it. I wasn't going to be all judgy. We're at a festival. You eat off the rug. I don't care.
It was an expensive hotel. Maybe I did. Anyway, so moving on to the next day, Friday the 2nd.
That's going to be our next podcast, and we can't wait to talk to you guys about it because this was an amazing day. This is Caroline.
And this is Paul. Please remember to rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast or any Pod Clubhouse podcast. We'll be having further ATX coverage on the Press Pass podcast, and later this summer, we'll be talking about Comic Palooza in Houston and San Diego Comic-Con once I go see what they have to offer this year. Thanks a lot.
Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening. This has been an original Pod Clubhouse production. Pod Clubhouse is a podcast network dedicated to encouraging collaboration among podcasters and friends to bring a fresh voice and diverse perspective on a wide array of content. Please visit and leave a comment for us at podclubhouse.com. Rate, review, and subscribe to our podcast feeds on Apple Podcasts. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can find us at Pod Clubhouse. Our DMs are always open, and we'd love to hear from you.